Are you afraid of your financial future? If so, you're not alone. Listen in as Rennie Gabriel, the financial coach, shares how you can develop a wealth mindset and the many opportunities that you can find during these challenging times that will lead you to your own financial freedom.
Welcome to this week's episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies that you can implement in as little as 15 minutes to build your dream business. And now here's your host, the Visibility Wiz, Cindy J.
Hi, I'm Cindy J, the Visibility Wiz, and welcome to this episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies that you can implement in 15 minutes or less to build your business. And today our guest is Rennie Gabriel. He's a TEDx speaker and the author of the award-winning best-selling book, Wealth on Any Income. After 2 divorces and a business failure, he was flat broke at the age 50 and started all over from scratch. After learning what was not taught from all of his financial education, he became a multi-millionaire in just a few years, and he has helped thousands of people avoid the financial downward spiral. Welcome, Rennie. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's good. It's good to be with you again, Cindy. And it was funny when you were stumbling over the wealth numbers. Probably if I took advantage of all 30 of the attitudes I wrote about in my recent book, I might be a billionaire instead of a multimillionaire. So,
right, yes. However, even one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk with you right now is because, you were truly the rags from riches. I know there was a time where you actually collected Coke bottles to survive. You're collecting the Coke cans and stuff. And then you totally changed your mindset and became a multimillionaire. And so many people right now, I think, with the pandemic, they're terrified of what's going on. They're terrified of losing money. They're terrified of going broke and so much. And I think you have so much valuable information that can really help people with their fears right now. Before we dive into the mindset and the money and what people can do today during the pandemic to prepare for the future, I would love it if you could share a personal or business challenge you had to overcome in order to achieve your level of success.
Probably one of the primary challenges I had to overcome was how I was in my own way and believing that the financial education I had as a certified financial planner somehow gave me the information I needed to create financial security. But it'd be the same thing as someone who's trained as a nurse or a dentist. They've learned how to earn a living. It has nothing to do with creating wealth.
Right. And so before we even talk about it, what is your definition of quote unquote wealth?
Thank you for asking. My definition is that you have enough reserves and assets that generate a passive income, so you have complete financial choice. You can choose to work or choose not to work. You can choose to donate your time, your energy, or your money to charities, which is what I do. You can choose to educate other people or choose to stay home. But it's a situation where you have the opportunity to choose whatever you want to do in life. It's an example. Someone who might create complete financial choice says, I want to travel the world. Great. Well, you wouldn't, during this pandemic, you're not even allowed on a plane.
Right.
But I have no interest, never had an interest in traveling. If you want to say I'm just some backward person, okay, fine. I enjoy being at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so complete financial choice to me means not having to travel.
Right. I love that. Yeah. And it's all about choice. I know. And it always means different things to different people. So even like right now, like you're saying with the travel, people couldn't travel right now because of the pandemic. But why do you think so many people are so afraid about money right now?
It's a natural reaction. The first place anyone goes to when they are faced with something like a pandemic, and I think this this episode that you're doing can fit, whether it's right now during this pandemic, a year or 2 or 3 years from now, because we're talking about basic human reactions. And when things don't go right, people end up in a fear state. And when they're in this fear state, the thoughts that they have are absolutely the ones that provide the evidence that they're correct. Instead of having what I would call thoughts that create empowerment or questions that create positive actions, it's sort of like the mind is an incredible functioning machine. Anything you ask it, it will come up with answers or solutions for you. If I say, why is my life a mess? Then your mind will search for all the evidence that shows you why your life is a mess. On the other hand, if I change the question to, what can I do to have better clients? What can I do to increase my revenue? What can I do to increase my level of security? You'll get the answers to those questions. But when people are in a fear state, they ask the wrong questions.
And with the fear, do you think, I mean, this is sort of what I've been thinking, and, you know, I used to work in the bank, so I learned a lot about the 1928, when the stock markets and the bank runs, and because that's when the FDIC came about. So I learned about all this. And I think there's people out there who think that we're going to have the same type of loss as we did back in. So they're looking at history and they're like being very afraid because of history. But how do you see it different today versus what it was 100 years ago when they did have all that stuff happen?
Well, I would say there's 2 things that I see that are different. Number one is that the government has put in place triggers that prevent certain things from happening, prevent the run on the banks. Federal Reserve pours money into the system and things of that. So there are mechanical things, number one, that didn't exist back then. But more importantly is the mindset that even in the Great Depression, after the stock market crashed in 28, there were people who recognized there are opportunities here. While thousands of people are standing in soup lines, other people were making fortunes because they had a different mindset. And the same thing is true right now. Because of this pandemic, there are tremendous opportunities available. As an example, there are people who only relied on person-to-person contact. Maybe they were a personal trainer or something of that nature. And what are they doing? They're transitioning to doing the same kind of work online that didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago, but does exist today. I started working online about 6 years ago. I've learned a tremendous amount, and I'm taking advantage of the opportunity to reach more people online than I ever did. I mean, I'm not going to networking meetings. I'm not meeting people person to person. I'm not speaking on stages because it's not available. Well, what are the opportunities? The opportunities are to reach people in another way that's available.
Right. And that's it exactly. And just our technology, the fact that we can sit here and talk with each other and communicate and share your message with everybody is something that would have been considered like totally science fiction in the 1920s and 30s. And so it's all about innovation. I think right now, so many people are really being innovative and creative. You had talked about some of the service professionals like a trainer, but there's other, and I know I had even said this once, like a masseuse could go online and teach people how to self-massage those tight spots, right? But how about some of the other industries, the restaurant industry? It's who, you know, I'm watching so much with this. What are your feelings and thoughts about the restaurant industry?
There will be some of them that will not survive during this period. There are others that'll do okay. Yes, many workers in that industry have had to be laid off. As an example, though, I got a text message from a Chinese restaurant almost every other day on specials that they're having and that they deliver, or you can pick it up. You can't dine in there. But the point is, they're keeping their business up because they're being proactive. They're not being reactive.
Exactly. And I think that's so important. So, even with all the small business owners, whether, I know some of my audience are the small service-based audience, but that's the big word, is be reactive instead of proactive. I keep going back to, it's one of my favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life. And whenever George, after the bank run, and George is saying, you don't understand, Potter is not helping you, he's just buying.
Yeah.
He's helping himself. And not that we want to be like Potter, but we definitely want that innovative mind that George had in It's a Wonderful Life.
Exactly. It's so funny because I talk about that movie as well, but from a different perspective. And it has to do with how culturally we are taught that poor people are the kind and noble, and the rich people like Potter are evil and greedy and mean. And the reality is, the wealthiest people in the world are the biggest philanthropists. You look at the Gates Foundation, you look at Bloomberg, you look at all sorts of people who have billions of dollars, and they are the biggest philanthropists. Mm-hmm. But you got Hollywood movies like It's a Wonderful Life, painting Potter as the, because he's got the money, he's horrible. You got the movie Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio. He's poor, he's in the bowels of the ship, he's happy, he's partying. And the rich guy who's engaged to marry is just a disgusting rich person.
Yeah.
And you look at Charles Dickens stories, you look at fairy tales like Jack and the Beanstalk. Well, Jack is poor, the giant is rich. So it's okay for Jack to steal the golden eggs, steal the goose that lays the golden eggs, and ultimately kill the giant. Why is that okay? Because Jack was poor.
Yeah, I've never even thought about like it in that way. And I know, and something that just popped into my head is the fact that so many people, and I've spoken to them, and I've even felt this way. It's like, my God, I don't want to become rich because I don't want to be this big bitch, right? I don't want to be a rich bitch. So I had this fear of being wealthy, thinking that it would change who I was. But then over time, I started meeting wonderful, wonderful people like you. And I started seeing how many friends I have that are multimillionaires and are the sweetest, kindest, most giving people ever. And also it's the more wealthy that's really able to help people. Like I know Dolly Parton just donated $1 million to help, I think, research the virus or vaccine for it. But it's if she didn't have that money, she couldn't do it. Somebody who's making, the poor people are not in the position to help. It's all these companies right now that are stepping up and creating masks and doing ventilators and doing things to help the public. If they didn't have the money, they couldn't do that. So exactly. I love that you pointed that out. So again, that's this thing, because we do see all these movies, and I never even thought about it like with the movies. So how does somebody even transfer from, hey, it's okay, letting out that they're not going to change if they become wealthy?
Well, I would say the first thing is to become aware that they've been influenced by movies and books and fairy tales and even the scripture. I mean, think of it from the standpoint of a needle can pass through the eye. No, a camel can pass through the eye of a needle easier than a rich man can get into heaven.
Right.
What's that message? Rich people don't get to go to heaven. I mean, it's to become aware of these kind of messages. Mm-hmm. And unless it's brought up to the consciousness, they just come in unconsciously and you operate by them. And when you were talking about, having the fear that you would change, the way I would address it, Cindy, is to say, Cindy, do you think you're a corrupt person? What would your answer be?
No.
Of course not. I know who you are. So guess what? If you became wealthy, you would not be corrupt. Right. You'd only become corrupt if you were already that way before you got wealth. Exactly.
And that is something that I came to know. And I think part of it, and there's nothing wrong with being wealthy, but I think if you're only in it for the money and you're only in it for me, and that's why you start getting money from the very beginning, those are the people like Potter. but then you get most people, and I really see that more wealthy people today have the attitude of giving. And so if you want to make money to give, then making money is going to be great for you, and you can have a great lifestyle yourself as well as help so many others. But if you're making money just to be greedy and hoard it, then you're going to continue to be miserable and corrupt.
Yeah. And the funniest thing about it is that hoarding does not work for a financial system, because, you know, I'm not going to get into the concept of the velocity of money, but money has to move through the system to benefit people. If it's being hoarded in the same way toilet paper was getting hoarded, then too many people go without, while one person has so much they can't even use it all. You know, it's the mindset. It's really recognizing how much is enough to deal with. I mean, one of the reasons I continue to do my online business and my books, you know, and speak to people on podcasts, is so that 100% of that money, the profits, can go to a charity.
Exactly.
That's more important to me now, is benefiting a charity specifically, and multiple charities secondarily, from the work I do. I mean, I don't have to work, but I want to benefit other organizations.
It gives you a purpose, and I think that's the big thing of, you know, even going back to, you know, Charles Dickens with the ghosts. It's like he realized that his wealth wasn't making him happy, but it was whenever he started giving that made him happy. And so if you're just sitting there, again, hoarding the wealth, or thinking that wealth is going to make you corrupt, whenever you tune into who you are and you have this purpose of helping somebody, regardless what it is, it gives, you know, whether you're poor or rich, having that purpose is what's going to make you happy. And
you're absolutely right.
And whenever you're wealthier, then you can do a lot more for the purpose.
Exactly. You can't pour from an empty cup. And
exactly.
And having those resources allows you to benefit more people, the things that touch your heart. And that's what our program is about. It's about raising philanthropists so that people can do the things that touch their heart.
I know that there's thousands of other people out there in the same situation as her. And she's like, hey, you know, what's going to happen if I can't pay my utilities or my rent, because eventually I'm going to have to pay these people. So what's some advice that you would give people like her all over the nation that have, you know, that have lost their livelihood? They are applying for unemployment, they are getting the stimulus check from the government, but they still have this like, oh, what am I going to do? How is this going to affect me in the future? What are some advice you'd give them, and what are some monetary tips you would give them?
There's two things I would say. The first is that the world recognizes this situation, which is why different municipal and state governments have put moratoriums on evictions. You know, if someone doesn't pay their rent, they cannot be evicted because of this. Banks are deferring payments on loans. Utilities are not allowed to shut off the power to someone that can't pay their bill. So someone who has no income needs to recognize and be aware that they are not alone, and that the utilities and the landlords and all the other entities are making arrangements for this. So that's number one. And number two is getting back to the restaurants in terms of being proactive. My wife was looking on I'm not sure what Nextdoor is called. It's an online thing where neighbors talk about different things. You know, there are coyotes in the neighborhood, and why is a helicopter flying above? And I'm looking for a healthcare worker for my father, or whatever. That's this app. I don't know what it's called, this platform, Nextdoor. I know it's all over the country. And my wife saw a thing from a college student who can't go to college right now because those are closed as well, who said, I don't remember what his job was before, but he said, because of what's going on, I'm willing to come to your home, not talk to you, not get near you, but I will detail your car for you. I wear a mask, I wear gloves, I have antiseptic, this, that, and the other. And for $30, or for $25, I'll wash your car. For $30, if it's an SUV, I'll wash it, I'll vacuum it out and do all this stuff. And my wife said, this is great. We have 3 cars here. You can't go to the car wash, they're closed.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with something resourceful to make money.
Exactly.
And my wife just hired him. Other examples are situations where there are online job boards. If someone can edit a book, they can get paid for that without going anywhere. If someone has secretarial skills and they can't go to work, they can become a virtual assistant. If they have technical skills, all of those things can be put to use. And there's, piles of things. I just wrote an email that'll be going out in a couple of weeks of all sorts of online resources where people can offer their services in unique ways. And a lot of the websites I'd never heard of. Fiverr is popular all over the place, but there were things like, I don't remember if this is the name, like giveupyourdayjob.com. It was something like that. And so there are opportunities when people are going to be resourceful and take positive actions instead of being reactive.
Yes, and that's what it's all about. It's getting out of the fear, and doing the right mindset. So give us a couple mindset tips for people to get out of the fear and into a wealth mindset.
Some of the ones that I have in my recent book, Attitudes of the Wealthy, I'll give you some of the most important. And that is when ordinary people hear familiar information, they make statements, such as, I'll give you an example. Let's say I said, one of the most important foundations to wealth is paying yourself first, treating yourself like you deserve to own some of the money you earn. And people will say, oh, I've heard that before. I know that. That's not new to me. Maybe they'll even say, and I did that. Okay. The ordinary person makes a statement that does not lead to any positive action. The wealthy mindset instead asks empowering questions like, how will I do this? Or where does this apply to me? Or who can support me with this? Or when will I start this or restart this if they've done it in the past? The wealthy person asks questions when they hear familiar information. And that's probably one of the most powerful mindset tools that when I adopted, created a major transformation in my wealth. Another one is focusing on the big picture instead of the details. Let's say that I'm looking to make some investment in real estate, and I go and I look and I'm thinking of buying a single family house and the paint's peeling and the carpet's shredding and the plumbing's dripping. And these are the details I'm focusing on. I could miss the big picture that this house is undervalued and in a fabulous neighborhood, and it doesn't take a lot of money to make a lot of money on it.
Right.
Things like the wealthy don't use debt to buy consumer goods. The wealthy use debt to build investable assets and generate a passive income. Mm-hmm. When I was broke, I didn't have enough money to invest in real estate by myself. But another attitude of the wealthy is wealth creation's a team sport, not a solo sport. The wealthy don't do these things by themselves. They have partners, they create syndications, they create partnerships, whatever. And that's what I did. My wife and a third person took our money together and made the down payment on a small piece of real estate. When that was doing well, we borrowed more money to make down payments on more apartment buildings. We used debt to create wealth. I mean, we literally went from the first 3 units we bought 3 years when I was 53 to 50 units in about 6 years. Again, yes. Because we did it as a team, I wasn't trying to do this by myself.
I think that's so important in life. It's like we really, as human beings, and even to accumulate wealth or happiness or anything, we can't be lone wolves. We need each other.
Exactly. And, and too many people, I got to tell you, focus on paying off debts instead of building investable assets. And probably what they're looking at is, oh my gosh, they're building these debts. How will they pay them off? That's not the thing to focus on. The thing to focus on is generating the income when they're able to do that again and treating themselves like they matter, paying themselves first, and investing that money so it creates passive income. That's what they need to focus on, not paying off the debts, because that's just a continual cycle of, well, I'll pay down the debts, then they come back, and you pay down the debts, and you never get to the point of investing the money and creating a passive income.
I've heard it. I've seen it on Facebook. I'm sure you have too. Is that really think they're really in so much despair that they can't see their way out. And so from what I'm hearing from you is just start asking yourself little questions that's going to help you out of that despair and more. And even, you know, I've been asked, well, should I still do my business right now? I'm like, yes. You need to find out what does your audience need now? How have their needs changed? You know, you can't stop doing your business. The world is not stopped. It's temporarily closed. That's what I've been calling it. The world's temporarily closed, but it hasn't stopped and it will reopen. So where do you want to be when it reopens?
Yeah, and there's two things I want to talk about to take off on what you said. One of them is, yes, you stay in business, but you pivot. You make a change, you make an adjustment. You go in a slightly different direction using the same skill set. So one is pivot. And the second is, not only do you ask yourself these questions, but it goes back to wealth creation being a team sport. You don't have to be the only one asking yourself these questions. You can have an accountability partner who asks you questions as well. You can have a coach. You can have a mentor. You can have a business partner. You don't have to do these things alone.
Absolutely love it. Gosh, Rennie, I could speak to you all day today and tomorrow, and I'm sure we'd never run out of anything to talk about.
No, we wouldn't.
And I know that you have a business strategy that our listeners can implement in 15 minutes or less. So can you share what that is?
Yes, I would say it's what I already talked about, and that's the pivot. From whatever you've done in the past, look to how you can make an adjustment or pivot to this new reality to continue in business and continue to generate an income. It's not about stopping what you're doing. It's just about modifying it.
I love that. Thank you. And I know that you have a wonderful gift for us. Can you share what that is?
Yeah, these attitudes I've been talking about that the wealthy operate from versus ordinary people. I just finished writing a book and it's called Attitudes of the Wealthy. It's got over 30 attitudes in it that the wealthy operate by. And like I said at the beginning, if I put into practice all of them, I would probably be a billionaire instead of a multimillionaire.
Right.
The point is, I'm comfortable where I am, and these attitudes can support other people to get to wherever they want to go.
I love that. Thank you.
How do they get it?
I was going to share that with them. Yeah. So in order to get your book, Attitudes of the Wealthy, what you want to do is head on over to bizsuccessin15.com/wealth. That's biz, B-I-Z, successin1515.com / all lowercase wealth, WEALTH. And you'll be able to grab your copy, compliments of Mr. Rennie himself, of the Attitudes of the Wealthy. I've read these attitudes and they are amazing, and they will really help you during any challenging times to be able to create the life that you want. And Rennie, do you have any parting words for us?
Yes. As long as people treat themselves like they deserve to own some of the money that they're earning, everything will work out.
I love that. Thank you very much. And thank you for being my guest today, Rennie.
Oh, thank you for having me back, Cindy.
And if you enjoyed today's show, feel free to share it with your friends. I think Rennie is a wealth of information, and right now everybody needs to listen to Rennie and get his book. So be sure to share this episode with your friends, and you'll want to hop on over to bizsuccessin15.com /wealth. You can re-listen to Rennie's words of wisdom. You can catch up on past episodes you might have missed, and while you're there, be sure to grab your book, Attitudes of the Wealthy. So I hope you have a great week, and be sure to tune in next week with another great episode. Big hugs.
You've been listening to Biz Success in 15. For all links mentioned in today's show, and to watch or listen to previous episodes, visit bizsuccessin15.com. Thanks so much for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for another amazing guest.